Today we're reviewing this. It's the coffee travel kit from a company called Pakt. Now Pakt are a bag company, but they did a Kickstarter project for this, an all-in-one solution for coffee on the go. So we'll open it up, we'll have a look inside. Then we'll brew some coffee with it. And then after that, we'll talk about whether it fits your specific needs as a solution for travel for coffee on the go. So let's open it up. Lots and lots going on inside. Now this here is the main part of it, and it's kind of a nesting doll situation. So we'll take a few bits out. Here's lids and brewer. And the main body, the main clever stuff is here. Now there is a scoop, but we know how I feel about scoops, so we'll leave that in there. And there's also the base for the kettle. Talk about that in a second. Now there is a little space here to keep your filter papers, but it does come with this little reusable, I think, metal mesh filter, which we're going to brew some coffee with. You could obviously put whatever kind of V60 papers you wanted in this little pouch on the side. So inside the kettle body are two things. This thing, which is ultimately your thermos, but inside that, if you take the lid off, is another little storage container. This container for grounds, for beans, whatever you're traveling with to brew. I don't have any coffee inside this because I'm not traveling right now, so we'll put you to the side. This is your thermos. We're going to brew into the thermos directly. It's dual-walled, stainless steel. And then you've got your brew cone. Now this goes together in a slightly funny way. Ooh, bad sound. Sorry. You kind of click it into place, and then it's a slightly larger cone. It's still pretty small, actually, which is interesting, but it sits atop your thermos. And then you would unfold your little metal filter. Oh God, I've broken it. Not quite sure how I managed to do that. Essentially, as I opened this out, I gave it a little squeeze and it popped at the seam part at the bottom here. That seems like a little bit of a design flaw. I was not being particularly rough with it, I don't think, but by just opening it out, I think I just squeezed a bit too much at the bottom, and that is broken. So I guess for the rest of this test, I will brew with paper. I had brewed with this before, and I'll share some thoughts on it at the end, but that's a bit frustrating. So let's brew some coffee. To do that, let's start with the kettle. Now the base, thankfully, is dual voltage, which means you can travel with it anywhere and it should work completely fine. You do need to adapt the plug on the end of it, so I do need to get a UK adapter to make this work, and then I can plug it in, put some water in this, and we can turn it on. Now there are some graduated lines inside the kettle. They don't have any markings for what they are, though I'm sure if you look on the website they'll tell you what they are. Interesting choice to mark, but not at least leave some indication in there. Lid on and power on. Let's put some coffee in. I'm just going to brew 15 to 250. That was a surprisingly angry boil, actually. There's a little vent at the top for water to come out of, and there's a little bit of spitting, which was interesting. Nice to pour with, if I'm honest. I think it's pretty pleasurable. Get a little swirl. Obviously it's cool touch by the jacketing on the outside of this, though this little bit exposed here is hot. Don't touch that. I've got to say, that's a very pleasurable pouring experience as they go. Very easy to work with, very easy to pour. Getting a bit of stalling with this paper filter as well, which is interesting. So just had to lift that up and it's flowing a bit quicker. It's sort of stalled out. So I've brewed my brew. It's in here ready to drink, and this thermos does look and feel very nice, though the way that the mold is done here, the seam is quite noticeable when you're holding it. It's not unpleasant, it's just definitely there. Now the brew did not go perfectly according to plan. I had some stalling in that brew. It seemed like the metal filter and the paper really stuck together, and that seemed to cause a stall, and just detaching the paper filter slightly from the wall, picked the speed back up. I will say that brewing previously with the reusable metal filter, I had some really good results. I really liked how clean it was. It was a surprisingly clean metal filter. It was easy to work with. It does seem a flaw that you need to pinch it to stay open on a seam that is quite weak, and it is now broken. Let's have a taste. Yeah, it's a nice brew. It certainly hasn't suffered horribly for a bit of a stall, just a bit slow. This, as a travel cup, is interesting as a decision to have such a large hole here. It makes it pleasurable to drink from, but maybe not an ideal travel container. This would spill very easily, and it would spill completely if you knocked it over. As an experience, it's very nice. The metal is nice to drink from, the cup is nice. The kettle is very nice. This is, in many ways, very well thought through, with a couple of moments that have sort of let it down. Now, this is expensive. It's on pre-sale, pre-order right now at $160. It will retail at $189. That's a lot of money for a small kettle, a travel mug, a collapsible filter cone, and a little container for ground coffee. You could put those things together as a separate kit of things much cheaper than that. But obviously it wouldn't all collapse into each other, into a nice little travel case. It wouldn't be the same kind of experience. Taking it to pieces is quite fun, it's quite easy. But I think about putting it back together. When you finish with the kettle, you'd obviously have to dump it out, but you need to cool it back down again. It's really hot, it's well insulated, so it stays really hot for a while. So there's a bit of a process there to cool it back down with cold water, throw that out, dry it down. And you want everything to be dry before you put it back together and traveled with it. So there's a bit of a process involved there. What's interesting about these kind of kits isn't as much what they put in, but what they don't put in. Putting in a little container that's a decent size, a decent capacity, but not actually super functional is an interesting choice to me. I feel like that is sufficient volume to have got a hand grinder into there, at least a workable one. I've seen hand grinders that comfortably fit into that kind of space. Whether you might choose to try and cram a hand grinder in instead of this is something that's up to you. Maybe just throw a bag of coffee in with you and, not use this to store your beans. But I guess they're pitching at people who are pre-grinding coffee or buying pre-ground coffee, which is still most people maybe. Who knows these days? A lot of people got grinders. But I don't know. I would want a grinder. I would want a solution that fits with this whole thing. I don't want to have this big pouch of stuff and then trying to find a place to put a grinder in on the side and then a bag of coffee and whatever it is I'm going to use. I'm going to go through more coffee than that pretty quickly if I'm traveling for any real period of time. So I'm probably going to be taking a bag of coffee with me rather than using this. The fact that this failed on camera is a bit embarrassing for me, but at the same time also kind of frustrating. I did as they show in their video. I was trying to pinch it open to make it stay open. I pinched on the seam as they do, and it just split. And I know how these things can happen. It just looks like they went too thin on the seam, and it's just not strong enough to cope with just a little bit of pressure from my fingers. I liked this. I liked the coffee it made. It's just frustrating that it broke. So let's answer the final question, which is, who is this for and does it work well for them? I guess it's kind of pitched at people who spend a lot of their lives in hotels or in Airbnbs or that kind of thing, which in the past had been someone like me. Kettles are nice to have. The idea of having a kettle wherever you go is good, but obviously you're going places that have power, and those honestly often have kettles. I know not every hotel does, but many do. I know not every Airbnb does, but many do. But if you're worried about it, yeah, it's nice. The kettle, I'm impressed with. It's nice to pour from. It's well designed, but it's expensive and it's heavy. It's 1.8 kilos before you put any coffee in this kit. And they say it's like throwing in a pair of shoes, but it's not. No one wears 2 kilos of shoes every day, I hope. I don't, anyway. Like, for many of us, the volume is as important as the weight. And so having something so heavy and so large doesn't feel super flexible. For me, yeah, I can see a use for this. I could see it fitting into aspects of my life when I travel, but it would be going into checked luggage. It would be for a worst case scenario where I got to the hotel and there's just nothing to brew good coffee with. But you still need a grinder. And that's what makes this not a complete kit for me. Overall, it's very well built. It's really nicely made. There's some thought gone into lots of aspects of it. I'd be really interested to know if other people have had similar issues with the filter splitting like that. But I'd love to hear from you. Have you got one of these? Have you had the same issues as me? Have you been looking at this and kind of holding off and waiting to see what people make of it? What's held you back? Is it the price? Is it something else? I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. But for now, I'll say thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.